Hello, and welcome to Columbus Connection. My name is Sierra Walker, and today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Robert Scott. Welcome to the show, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I am new to the area. I've recently accepted an appointment to become the Community Reinvestment Director for the Community Reinvestment Department with the city. And in our office, we look to leverage programs, nonprofit-driven programs, in a way that will help to unlock some of the social, economic, and human potential for the citizens in the community of Columbus.
Okay, so you and your team have a grant program that you guys have that's to help with COVID-19 relief and aid. So can you tell us a little about that?
Absolutely. Through the CARES Act funding, the Department of Housing and Urban Development has given the community $981,189 to fund things that will prevent or to treat or to help the impact that COVID-19 has had on our community. So we're excited to have an additional funding stream to be able to meet the needs of the low to moderate income citizens of Columbus, as well as those that live in low and moderate income census tracts.
All right, so these funds are solely for Columbus, Georgia?
Yes, these funds, Columbus is considered what HUD calls an entitlement community. So annually we receive funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development to be able to do these types of things. But this particular allocation is in addition to our normal allocation. So these are like extra funds that the government basically has given us to be able to implement into our community for ongoing projects or programs designed to meet those populations that I've referenced.
So what specifically does do these funds meet the needs for?
Well, they provide for a lot of things for our nonprofit partners. One of the things that, the first thing that pops off in my mind are payroll expenses. A lot of donations and in-kind donations have dwindled due to the economic impact that COVID-19 has had on communities, with many people facing unemployment, and various different issues that have stemmed from the situation. So these funds will help organizations be able to pay the people who are providing the services for the most neediest of our citizens in our community. It'll allow for things like equipment, PPE, personal protective equipment, things like masks, sanitization stations, personal barriers. It'll allow for medical testing, including both serological and both antibody testing. And it also would allow for some building improvements to prevent or treat COVID-19 impacted people. But it will go to help mobile food pantries. A lot of our most vulnerable population are senior citizens. And so the senior citizens who we want to protect and keep in some sort of social distancing measure, this type of funding will allow us to fund programs like that to make sure that we can keep that population protected.
Absolutely. And earlier you mentioned your nonprofit organizations. What agencies exactly are connected to this, to your fund?
Well, any nonprofit that is received a 501c3 designation from the IRS is eligible to apply for the funding. We have had historical partners. We've had Home for Good. I believe it's Mercy has been one. And several others. Again, with me being so new, I don't have every last one of them on the top of my mind, but there are several that we have worked with, which we encourage to continue to apply for this extra funding, as well as those who we don't have a traditional relationship with. We want to make sure that we can get these funds out into the community in such a strategic way that we can provide the most maximum bang for the buck in which we award.
So how exactly do these organizations go about applying for this grant?
Well, that's a great question. The application period is going to be open between July 13th through July 24th. You can get access to the online application through the Community Reinvestment page on the city's website, as well as through the Community Reinvestment page on Facebook. So there will be a couple different ways that people can get access, but those are the primary ways in which we would like to drive the digital traffic, for lack of a better word.
And how exactly will these funds be distributed? Is there like a set number of programs that you're picking, or is it everyone who is selected just given?
It's fair game.
Okay.
It is a very competitive process. What's going to happen is agencies who are interested in the funding will complete the application. We have scoring criteria that we try to be as transparent as possible. We've included the scoring criteria within the application as part of the application process. So some agencies will leverage that in a way they'll write the application, but then go back and then score the application. So which is a great tool. That's why we chose to put it that way. So it's pretty much based off of how well the application was written, as well as the strategic needs of the community. Like we know for sure, with the high rates of unemployment and people losing job and hours being cut back, and some in childcare, with kids being home, that's another cost-burdened expense. We know that homelessness prevention is definitely going to be a need that this money could be used for, probably one of the more important ones. Because every day that a family doesn't pay a rent or makes a decision to choose between want versus a need, it's a tough thing, And so if we can use these funds in a way to alleviate some of that cost burden issue or crisis that the families are facing because of this impact that this virus has had on our community, then that's an efficient way. There are nonprofit child care agencies that wish to give scholarships, to kids so that parents can get back to work. Those are what I would consider great eligible uses of funding. Again, there are a lot of different ways that nonprofit agencies could use the funds. So what I would recommend is that if you are considering, or if an agency would be considering applying for the funds, don't count yourself out. We have a professional team, and together between our team and our knowledge and experience around the funding, from the federal regulatory standpoint, which drives everything that we do. So if we can leverage that in a way that will be able to marry the intent to the funding source, and then provide technical assistance to make sure that they can meet the needs of the expectations of the federal requirement that tied to the funds.
So once the application has been submitted, when exactly will the funds be given to those selected applicants?
Oh, that's a great question. So the process works like this. Between the 13th through the 24th of July, we will allow the community to apply for the funding. Once the application closes, we will take a week or so to read them all, because, and not just one person reading an application and then scoring. We want multiple eyes. So that way we can have a well-developed perspective and insight into why an application was scored that way. We're going to rank them. We're going to look at the money that we want to fund. We're going to look at versus the need. If an application scores well and they have a need, a high need, then those are things that we're going to consider and to take into context rather with the total amount that we awarded. Just short of $1 million, doesn't lend us to solve every problem. So we'll take those scores into consideration, and then we'll make a recommendation. We expect to go to City Council on August 11th. Shortly after that, we expect to create the agreements to actually put the funding into the the nonprofit agency's hands, and then we expect to issue notices to proceed, which are authorizations for reimbursement, basically, by August 31st, which I believe is a Monday.
So you mentioned need. So will agencies with a higher need receive a greater amount with these funds, or is it a fixed amount for all agencies?
It won't be a fixed amount.
Okay.
We need to maintain the flexibility because that allows us to be strategic with the implementation, correct? All right, so it's primarily based on how well the application is written, as well as the need, in the community. If it's something that we have identified as a high need, something like a homelessness prevention, I'm providing this service, but I have a hard time meeting payroll for my staff, those types of things, then we definitely want to make sure that in context with the score of the application will determine if someone is awarded, and then if they are awarded, the next thing we have to determine is how much will we award.
Yeah. So for clarification purposes,
Okay.
These funds go directly to a nonprofit organization or an agency, not individual people.
Correct, absolutely. Pretty much all of the work that our office does is through the partnership with nonprofit organizations. We provide the funding, they administer the programs, and they've been doing a great job, over the course of looking back over the new records and things that I've seen since I've been here. The nonprofit partners that we've had have done a phenomenal job. And I want to thank them, publicly, just thank them.
Yes, sir. So if anyone has any comments or any questions, how exactly can they contact you?
Well, you can get our contact information from the Community Reinvestment page. It was on the city's website. If you just click on departments and choose Community Reinvestment, you can reach out to us that way. All of our phone numbers are listed, as well as our email addresses. So we welcome email primarily because it's the fastest form of communication.
Yeah.
And we're very mobile, fluid people, and the work that we do is out in the community, so it's hard to be tethered to a phone. So we encourage emails, and that's how you can find our emails.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the public about the program?
Well, awesome, great opportunity. Our office is dedicated, like I said, to trying to really develop and unlock the potential that Columbus has. Columbus is a city of great potential, has made amazing strides over the past decade, especially from my perspective, being an outsider. Looking in, it was one of the things that attracted me to this area. And I'm looking forward to our office and our partnerships with our nonprofit partners to be able to really, really, really do some amazing things over time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today here at Columbus Connections. That's all that we have for today. See you next time.